Right now, while you are reading this, a war is being fought inside your body, not in your lungs, not in your stomach, inside the walls of your arteries, silently, invisibly, without a single symptom you can feel. Your arterial walls are either being damaged or defended, either accumulating destruction or holding the line. And the terrifying part is this: the war can be almost completely won by the wrong side before you ever feel a single thing. No chest pain, no shortness of breath, no warning, just a perfectly normal Tuesday morning followed by an event that changes everything in under 3 minutes. This is not fear. This is vascular biology, and understanding exactly what is happening inside your arteries right now at the cellular level is the difference between catching this war early and discovering it has already been lost. Let's go inside. Your arteries are not simple pipes. This is the first and most dangerous misconception most people carry. When doctors talk about blocked arteries, most people picture a garden hose slowly filling with mineral deposits, a pipe that narrows over decades until one day the water stops flowing. This mental model feels logical. It is also profoundly wrong, and it is wrong in a way that gets people killed, because it makes them believe they will feel the blockage happening, that there will be warning, that the narrowing will announce itself before the crisis arrives. Here is what is actually happening. Your arterial wall is a living, dynamic, multi-layered biological structure. The innermost layer, the one in direct contact with your blood, is called the endothelium. It is a single cell layer thick, one cell, and it is arguably the most important tissue in your entire body that nobody has ever heard of. The endothelium is not passive. It is constantly producing signaling molecules that regulate blood pressure, control inflammation, prevent clotting, and determine how your artery wall responds to everything flowing past it. When your endothelium is healthy, your arterial wall is essentially Teflon. Blood cells, platelets, cholesterol particles, they all slide past without friction, without adhesion, without incident. But when your endothelium is damaged, everything changes. The war begins at the endothelium, and the weapons attacking it are not exotic or rare. They are present in the daily lives of the majority of people reading this right now. The first weapon is oxidized LDL cholesterol. Not LDL cholesterol itself, which the public has been incorrectly demonized for decades, but specifically LDL particles that have been oxidized, chemically damaged by free radicals circulating in your bloodstream. When oxidized LDL makes contact with a damaged or inflamed endothelial cell, something happens that sets the entire cascade in motion. The endothelial cell recognizes the oxidized LDL as a threat and sends out a chemical distress signal. This signal recruits monocytes, a type of white blood cell from the bloodstream. The monocytes cross through the endothelium and enter the arterial wall itself, where they transform into macrophages. These macrophages begin consuming the oxidized LDL particles in an attempt to clean up the perceived threat. But here is where the biology turns against you. The macrophages consume so much oxidized LDL that they become engorged with lipid droplets and transform into what pathologists call foam cells. Foam cells are the foundation of every atherosclerotic plaque in every artery in every human body. They are the opening move of the war, and they form silently, invisibly, in arterial walls throughout your body, years and sometimes decades before any clinical symptom appears. The second weapon attacking your endothelium is chronic inflammation. This is where the story becomes directly relevant to the choices you make every day. Chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind driven by excess processed sugar, refined vegetable oils, visceral fat around your organs, chronic psychological stress, disrupted sleep, and sedentary behavior, continuously activates your endothelial cells into a pro-inflammatory state. Activated endothelial cells express surface proteins called adhesion molecules that act like Velcro on the inner surface of your arterial wall. Instead of the smooth Teflon surface of a healthy artery, you now have a sticky, reactive surface that captures passing immune cells and lipid particles and pulls them into the wall. This is the process happening inside your arteries right now if your lifestyle contains any of these inflammatory drivers. Not dramatically, not painfully, just quietly, continuously, at the cellular level, every single hour of every single day. The third weapon is mechanical. High blood pressure. Your arterial wall is subjected to billions of pressure pulses over your lifetime, one with every heartbeat. A healthy arterial wall is elastic and flexible, absorbing these pulses and rebounding smoothly. But chronically elevated blood pressure subjects the endothelium to sheer stress forces it was not designed to withstand continuously. The result is microscopic damage to the endothelial layer, particularly at arterial branch points where blood flow creates turbulence. These damaged zones become the preferred sites for foam cell accumulation and plaque development. This is why atherosclerosis develops in predictable locations. The coronary arteries, the carotid arteries in your neck, the renal arteries feeding your kidneys. These are the high turbulence, high shear stress zones where endothelial damage concentrates. An elevated blood pressure accelerates the damage at every one of these sites simultaneously. Now here is the mechanism that kills people who thought they were safe. As foam cells accumulate inside the arterial wall, the body attempts to contain them by building a fibrous cap over the developing plaque. This cap is made of smooth muscle cells and collagen, and it separates the inflammatory, lipid-rich interior of the plaque from the bloodstream flowing past it. For years, even decades, this cap holds. The plaque grows slowly inside the arterial wall, and crucially, the wall expands outward to accommodate it, rather than narrowing the channel inward. This is called positive remodeling. It means you can have a massive plaque burden inside your arterial walls with a completely unobstructed blood channel flowing through the center. Your stress test is normal. Your symptoms are zero. You feel completely fine because the blood is still getting through. The war has been building for years, and your body has been successfully hiding it from you. What breaks the peace is plaque vulnerability. Not all plaques are equal. Stable plaques have thick fibrous caps and dense, calcified interiors. They are less likely to rupture and more likely to cause the gradual narrowing that eventually produces symptoms. But vulnerable plaques, the ones that actually cause most fatal heart attacks and strokes, have thin, fibrous caps stretched over a large, soft, inflammatory core filled with foam cells, lipid debris, and inflammatory cytokines. When the fibrous cap of a vulnerable plaque tears, which can happen during a sudden spike in blood pressure, intense physical exertion, or even severe emotional stress, the inflammatory contents of the plaque are suddenly exposed to the bloodstream. Your blood sees this exposure as a catastrophic wound. Platelets rush to the site and form an emergency clot. Within minutes, that clot can completely seal the artery. Not the plaque itself, the clot. This is what stops the blood flow. This is what kills heart muscle within 20 minutes and brain tissue within 4. And the plaque that caused it may have been narrowing the artery by only 30 or 40%. Invisible on any symptom-based assessment, undetectable without advanced imaging. This is why the standard approach of waiting for symptoms is a biological trap. By the time you feel chest pain climbing stairs, your coronary arteries are likely already narrowed by 70% or more. By the time a stroke warns you with temporary neurological symptoms, vulnerable plaques have already been developing in your cerebral arteries for years. The war has been raging far longer than any symptoms suggested. So what does the other side of this war look like? What does the defending army consist of? The primary defender is a healthy, intact endothelium, an endothelium that is producing adequate nitric oxide, the molecule that keeps your arterial wall relaxed, prevents platelet adhesion, and suppresses the inflammatory activation that begins the foam cell cascade. Nitric oxide production is directly supported by regular physical movement, which creates the blood flow patterns that stimulate endothelial nitric oxide synthase. It is supported by dietary antioxidants that prevent LDL oxidation. It is supported by blood pressure control that reduces mechanical shear stress damage. It is supported by blood sugar regulation that prevents the glycation of endothelial proteins and the suppression of nitric oxide synthase by elevated glucose. The second defender is resolution. Your body has a sophisticated system of pro-resolving mediators, molecules derived from omega-3 fatty acids that actively switch off inflammatory processes inside the arterial wall once the triggering threat has been neutralized. When this resolution system is working properly, foam cell formation is limited, fibrous caps are maintained, and vulnerable plaques are stabilized. When it is overwhelmed by a chronic excess of pro-inflammatory signals, resolution fails, inflammation persists, and plaque vulnerability increases. The ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in your diet directly influences this balance. The modern Western dietary pattern, dominated by refined seed oils and processed foods, creates an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of roughly 15 to 20 to 1. Ancestral human diets maintained a ratio of approximately 2 to 4 to 1. This shift has measurable consequences for arterial inflammation at the cellular level that no amount of medication fully compensates for. Here's what makes this information genuinely useful rather than merely frightening. The arterial wall is not a static structure. It is a living tissue with real capacity for recovery and stabilization when the conditions that drove its damage are removed. Endothelial function improves measurably within weeks of sustained aerobic exercise. Plaque inflammation decreases with sustained reduction in dietary inflammatory load. Fibrous caps stabilize and thicken when systemic inflammation drops. Vulnerable plaques can become stable plaques. The war can shift in your favor, not through a single dramatic intervention, but through the accumulated effect of daily decisions that either feed the inflammatory process or starve it. Your arteries do not care about your intentions. The chemistry of what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you manage stress, and how you treat the biological systems that maintain the one-cell layer standing between your bloodstream and the inflammatory machinery inside your arterial wall. The silent war happening inside your arteries right now is not inevitable. It is not a predetermined outcome written into your genetics that you simply wait to experience. It is a dynamic, ongoing biological process that is either accelerating or decelerating based on the environment you create inside your own body every single day. Understanding the mechanism is not meant to frighten you into paralysis. It is meant to show you exactly where the leverage points are. Because when you understand that the war begins at the endothelium, that oxidized LDL and chronic inflammation are the primary weapons, that plaque vulnerability rather than plaque size determines what kills you, and that nitric oxide and resolution are the primary defenders, you stop guessing about what actually matters for cardiovascular health, and you start making decisions with real biological precision. Your arteries have been fighting this war without your knowledge for years. Now you know it is happening, and now you can decide which side you are going to reinforce. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep understanding your biology at this level. Like this video and share it with someone whose arteries are fighting a war they don't know about yet.